Okay, so I guess I'll just pick up where we kind of left off with the some of the conversations we've been having on Twitter, and
Mhm.
it's sort of extended from our last talk. But the first thing I wanted to ask was essentially it's two questions that I want to kind of combine into one. But the first thing is when you're playing a game like Street Fighter V, in your opinion, which comes first, learning your character or learning characters, or actually learning the mechanics of the game?
Oh man, the first would probably just be learning the mechanics, just from the core concept of uh, how, like, what does the meter mean? Like, think about, even if like I come into Street Fighter, I'm like a Street Fighter player, right? But say I jump into Guilty Gear, like, what all those meters mean? What do the bars mean? Like, there's a certain, like, ladder of knowledge you need to learn, like base level knowledge you need to learn about a game, like, because teching throws is different in different games. Sometimes you can't tech throws. Like, there's just core concepts that, like, you'll learn eventually before you learn your character. Like, if you're just like hitting your head against a rock, like, to learn the mechanics, like, kind of learn it as you go, you'll learn those before you learn the specific character. And then character knowledge gets like way, even like way later, that stuff gets like higher and higher, because then you have like entire discords dedicated to character conversations of, like, having a conversation of like, well, this, you're +3 here off of a jab, so that means that if you hit meaty on frame 5, then, like, you get weird conversations later that get into like extreme specifics. So I think that is probably the order of operations there.
Okay. And on the note of both of those, for the mechanics first, or learning mechanics of Street Fighter, and it goes into your book a little bit, but what do you think the most effective way is to learn Street Fighter?
So I think the order as it is, because there's two tracks here in my mind. There's the mechanical track of how do you control this game, and the mental track of, am I thinking about this game when I'm playing it? And you can kind of learn both simultaneously, but I'm gonna stick with the mechanical track first, because as it's laid out in the book, I think that the order of the chapters as they are is kind of like a really good, if you come in with nothing, that's like the core, like, start with this, then this, then this. Like, step one is learning your normals, and that's step one. And it's so importantly step one, because a lot of people immediately want to jump to step 4, where it's like, I don't know what it is, but like learning a special move, because you're like, okay, I'm playing Ryu, I want to learn how to throw a fireball, where it's like, there's so many reasons not to throw a fireball in this game, where it's way more important to learn what your, like, how far your buttons go. And that is a very often step that's skipped when people learn the game. And then it goes into like defense, to where even in the defensive chapter, it says like, learn how to block high and low. But if you get thrown in that lesson, it says like, don't punish yourself. Don't reset the clock if you get thrown because you were blocking. That means you were not pressing buttons. And at a very basic starter level, like, that's, so many people just want to hit all the buttons when they're defending. You're scared to block. You're scared to be hit, but you can't be hit when you're blocking, which, I mean, you can cascade that conversation into, well, what if I play against Zangief? And then it's like, well, that's a different animal. What if I play against Mika? Well, she's going to put you in the blender. Don't worry about that. But like, that's the core concept of like, learn your normals, learn how to defend, like, then start learning like how your character controls, then start figuring out your combos. Cause that's the other mistake that people make is, I picked a character that I think is cool. What's his most damaging combo? And more often than not, they'll look up videos, and it's actually funny because when Akuma was released, immediately you see combo videos of like, here's how much damage he can do. Look at all this stun. And every single one starts with a jump in attack. And it's like, okay, that's like such a specific scenario of being able to land a jump in attack to start this combo that it's almost not even worth learning right away, because what's more important is where do I want to stand with Akuma? What buttons do I want to press in the neutral with Akuma? What's my anti-airs? Like, there's no, like, right off the bat, people are posting like, here's 500 plus damage on one combo. Here's 1,000 health with one reset and stun with, but like all of those combos require full meter, full V trigger, and a crush counter somewhere in there, like hoping that your opponent will just mash out a DP. Like, those are so specific when really it's like, okay, what are my anti-airs? Where should I press a sweep? Like what's my actual pressure like? Like what's my good block strings? Things like that, instead of actually learning, like, because what good is a huge combo to a player who doesn't really know like how to land a combo? That's a question that I hear all people ask all the time, is like, how do I start my offense? That's a super common question. And the answer is playing the neutral, but that kind of means that you have to forget the combos that you've been working on of your max damage, jump in combos. Like, you kind of have to forget that for a minute. Like, it's important. Those are important to learn at some point. Like, those are good to know. I'm not saying that like learning combos is bad, but like, if you only go into a matchup knowing your jump in combos and how those combos work, then you have skipped so many steps in terms of how to get damage. And like, just going back to the book though, I was talking to you before this, before we started talking, where season 2 was released. So I updated the book for the second edition. So it's got like a new cover, but it's also got a new FAQ section, which is a lot of questions that I hear people ask that I didn't necessarily think warranted their own chapter, but it just like covers a bunch of little stuff of like people asking, like, the other track is kind of the mechanics side of the game, is like, well, do I need to learn frame data? And the answer is kind of like, it's a tool, but like right away, like don't worry about that right now. There's only specific like numbers. If you do want to look at frame data, it's there. It can be used as a tool. And there's just certain things you need to look for. So you don't need to worry about like, oh, how many active frames is this? And if I knock down my opponent, how much do I like, when do I press my buttons so that it hits meaties? And like, that's right off the bat, it's not important. Like, there's more important things to be learning. But then there's the other track of the mental side of it, you're not playing Street Fighter in a vacuum. You're not playing against a computer. You're playing against another person. So if all you did was learn, you spent like 5 hours with the game and you're like, oh man, I've picked Ryu. I learned all my combos. I know how to tech. I know what my meter means. Like, I can do all these things with Ryu. And first day with the game, you hop online and what if they jump at you? Like, what are you going to do? Like, what range is your opponent going to jump at you from? Like, why would your opponent want to jump here? Or like, why would they do something on wake up? Like, there's so many things that go into the meta side of the game that you also need to learn simultaneously, which is why it's super important to learn fighting games alongside other people. It is like you're controlling your one player. It's a one player game versus another player, but there's a community aspect of it that is very important when you're trying to learn it and trying to play competitively, to where you just need that back and forth with someone else to be like, oh, well, why did you do that? And it's like, well, because you're not paying attention to what I'm doing is why I'm doing that. So you weren't blocking low once. So I could just hit you low on wake up every time, and then you learn. So there's that side of it as well.
Yeah, and there's a few different points I want to make there, and the last topic first, and hopefully I got the term right. One of the person who ran the FGC that I stayed at, he told me about a term called Yomi, which is essentially I know that you know. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
And so he knows that I love psychology, I love philosophy, I love understanding the human brain. And so he knew that once I got to the level of Yomi, I would really enjoy that. And at the time, I didn't quite get that. I kind of did because I played DOA competitively, and I loved that game because of the parry system. I know a lot of people hate it. That's a side thing. But I do love the mind games of things. That's why I love martial arts for that same reason, because it's not, your body has to be able to do the execution part. Your body has to be able to throw a punch accurately. Your legs need to be able to kick exactly where they need to go and fast, and not telegraph what it is that you want to do. Same thing with a fighting game. And once you understand the mechanics, the execution, then the fun comes from understanding what your opponent's going to do, and then also knowing what your opponent knows that you might do, and causing that mix up. And you can't get that, like you said, in a vacuum. You can't do that on your own. You can't come up with these mind games until you actually get the experience of how another player plays, because you can set up all these cool setups and combos and things, but if a person sees it coming from a mile away, you never get the opportunity to actually do it. So it becomes a moot point, so to speak. And to go back to and I have a question too about like FGCs and community in a second, but I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about practicing your max range. I thought that was one of the things that, and I'm going to try to combine all these topics into one kind of story, but a lot of gamers, and it's not so much any fault per se, but they have, a lot of the old school fighting game players have this mentality of, you just keep getting beat and you learn. And I do agree that you have to play more experienced people, but there's also a lot of thought and things that go behind it as well, because like a lot of people think that the best way to learn the max range is just by playing a lot of fights. And I would have to disagree. I liked your exercise because I had never thought about practicing max range until I came across your book, where I would just sit there and go back and forth and learn where I can and can't. And that alone has changed my footsies and my neutral games so much. Like I have so much confidence against like a Geef because I know my buttons. I know what buttons I can and can't press. I'm not saying that I'm godlike when I'm fighting a good Geef, but I've played people. I played a lot of Geefs now, and so it's really
super important in that particular matchup. That's super important.
Oh god!
Once you learn that, like that's the matchup.
It's an uphill battle fighting Geef, particularly because he does so much damage. You mess up once, he gets one good read, and all the damage you did is just gone as a Fong player. It's terrible. But anywho, so to get back on point is that I've been practicing the max range and a lot of the other neutral game exercises to really get that going, and to get back to the point which you were talking about, playing other people not in a vacuum, so forth, is, and you've already alluded to this a little bit, but I want you to elaborate a little bit more on how important it is to have an FGC or some sort of community when it comes to fighting games.
Mm-hmm. It's like, so what's the best way to describe this? It's one of those things where you never improve at anything really universally if you never fail at it. And playing other people that will point out your failures is the best way to come back from those failures and actually improve. Because if you're playing against like AI, for example, that's another common question of, can I play against AI? Will I get better at this game by playing AI? The answer is no, you won't. Like there's certain things that you'll get better at. Like you can learn how to punish things, but it's not going to play like a human plays. You're not going to learn the things that people do. And then you're never going to then turn that in to look at yourself in your own game. You're only going to continue to do the things and you're going to learn them in a bad way. Similar to like if you have, and you see this with small communities in particular, which I think is, it used to be this way. It's not so much this way anymore. We're getting better at it. But in smaller communities that run tournaments, they'll run tournaments with cash payouts. Like you pay a cover for the venue and for whatever game you're signed up for. Then that goes into the pot. There's no financial reason why the best player in your community would ever teach anyone how to get better if they're only going to stay in that small pool. Now I guarantee it, in a community like that, that player then goes to a major, they're going to get bopped. They're going to get bodied so hard because they have not taught anyone else how to beat them. And they're going to do the things that they did to beat worse players and just get blown up for it because there's so many other communities out there who have help level each other up. Now, as I said, it's getting better. There are tons of communities out there, tons of way smaller communities that are just like, no, let's just focus on getting better. Like there's like a little bit of cash on the side, and like, let's just say that's like for, it's almost like it's between friends that are like a poker game, right? But there's a lot of people who are just pushing each other, of knowing that there's that next stage of, okay, we might be located in this small region in this city, but we're all going to travel next month. We're going to go to another city, and we're going to see how we fare against those players. And then let's just take that to like the main stage. Let's all go to Evo. That's why you see so many communities be like, no, we all got our flights out to Evo. We're all staying in the same block in the same hotel, and we're going to challenge other communities to money matches, and we're going to all stick together, and we're all going to coach each other, and it's going to be a good time. Like that's like the Street Fighter World Warrior kind of crossover that is, it's one of those, I don't ever think it was like intent. Like they lucked into this World Warrior thing like way earlier of like before it was ever like a world competition, where it helps you see the value of traveling with your community and like playing people who are stronger than you. Like the whole sense of Ryu is like, I have to find stronger opponents and find the truth in the heart of battle. And it's like, yeah, man, like you need to get out there and play people who are potentially better than you, because you'll learn that way.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And for those who might not know, can you describe a little bit what a World Warrior is?
That is like the concept they give like in game, where it's like, I'm not going to wear a white gi and then try and fight, like not wear any shoes ever and carry a knapsack. I'm not about that life. I'm a family man. I got to stay at home, be a family man like Guile. However, that concept is, and I feel like one of the people who pushed this idea the most, and I have major respect for the dude, is Alex Valle. That is a dude who has leveled up his community to a point, but he also knows there's a limit to the knowledge his community can learn before they go out and get bodied by other players. And that's why you see so many people around him. Like, look at Wednesday night fights. Look at all the names that are out at major events, like all the time. You list a major event in the US, more often than not, there's going to be a group of people that attend Wednesday night fights that's going to be there. And they're going to be strong because they were at the last major. They were at the major before that. And they've traveled the world and seen people play different styles. Like a lot of people have like gone to Japan. That's why like that was the whole like the romance of going to Japan, like, and going into the arcades and playing against the 9-to-5 guys in a business suit who just walked into an arcade in the afternoon to be like, well, I'm going to smoke 5 cigarettes and play 20 matches and then go home. And those dudes would wreck you because that's what they did. That was just their life. And they've kind of boiled it down to a science where, and this was kind of back when they're like, was the arcade scene in Japan's kind of died a little bit. It was much stronger with the 4, where you just see people who would go in the afternoon. They would kind of, that's why that whole Japanese scene would be like so mathematical in terms of, yeah, that's punishable. I'm going to punish you for it. That's not something your character should ever do in this matchup. So they would play super conservative and just not do those things because they were just like, well, I'm just going to make this yen last as long as it can. And that is a different style of playing that you're not going to see in like the YOLO American reset side of things, where it's like a combo drop doesn't matter. We're going to find another combo, like on the American side, where it's like, I don't care. I've got the internet. I'm just going to be in another match soon. I'm 12 years old. Fight me. Like that's a different style of play than the 9-to-5 guy who's just like, I just got a couple yen. I'm going to let it last. I get 5 more cigarettes and then I'm out of here. Like that's a different style of play. And you're not going to learn how to play against people that way if you don't travel or see it or experience it in some way.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of what you said alludes to one of my questions I wanted to ask, which is it's circulated around motivation to improve, not just the act of improving, but the mentality behind wanting to improve. It seems like it varies very vastly with people. Like that's to me, what I've noticed is that's a key indicator to people who are either really dedicated or not. You know, you have the people who we talked about before who make the blame game. They make excuses. They don't hold themselves accountable. But there are people who have this strong desire to get better no matter what. Like, what do you think causes that, in your opinion?
So I'm going to answer the opposite of that first by saying that with online play, with like Street Fighter 4 being an online game, Street Fighter 5 being an online game, and that whole Street Fighter community now able to play each other online kind of whenever, that you saw two types of players. Like there was two mentalities of people going into that, of people who were just like, no, I'm going to do what I do. It's only one match at a time, so there's no like rematch. Like we're just going to go. And if I beat you, that's awesome. I'm going to send some hate mail. That's great. I'm the best. Who cares? But then there's other people who are just like, yeah, I don't really care about the points. If I lost, I'm going to find out why I lost and improve. Now, the people who, like, why would you want to improve? Like, what is the motivation there? What is the motivation to improve? Online, there's not really much motivation. It's like, here's some points if you win. And there's actually there's almost like a weird backwards mentality to it, where that you only get rewarded if you win. There's no rewards in Street Fighter for losing in both of the games that have been online. Like there's no, you don't get points for it. You don't get like anything extra on top. There's no like, you don't get a special costume if you play X amount of matches with a character. Like there's no play the game. There's none of that. There's, oh, I lost. In fact, I got punished for it. And you can either bat your head against that wall and say, no, I'm better than that guy. He didn't deserve my points. I'll rage quit. Or you have the person who goes, oh, I lost to something I'd never seen before. Points, whatever. It's not like that guy has hurt my ego. That's fine. Like it's online. I've played 100 matches today. If I lose to Joe Schmo, it doesn't matter because I actually saw something I didn't recognize. And now I'll learn how to defend against that so I can block it next time or something like that. That's a different type of mentality that I think, I don't know, the way that fighting games are, it both harbors that, and then the online aspect of that is like, well, you can just totally forget all that and just not improve at all. You can pull your plug out, and guess what? You're not punished at all. That's great. Isn't that awesome? But I don't know. There's two different mindsets for there.
Yeah, I want to agree, and I want to say there's more to it as well. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm really fascinated by is motivation in the gaming community specifically, let alone the fighting game community. It seems like there's certain we have the same habit of a lot of other people, which is to kind of mystify the great people. Like we have this habit. Human nature has this habit of just making, oh, this guy is Justin Wong or he's Daigo, and I believe we talked about this before, but it's still really fascinating how the FGC and anybody really thinks that they can't get as good. Like this mentality, and I understand it because I was there for a long time, but it's still, as I progressed through many different areas of my life, it's really fascinating to see that a lot of people don't realize that, oh, it just takes practice, it takes focus practice, and it takes, these number of things. But at the same time, the criteria for getting better, it isn't just laid out in front of you. I mean, you obviously are helping, which is like why I like talking to you, because there's so many ideas in your head I want to get out. But yeah, there up until very recently, there wasn't really criteria of how to get better at a fighting game. You know, with at least with martial arts, you have a sensei. At least in business, you have managers and gurus and all these other people to help you learn. But when it comes to gaming in general, there's just now getting coaches. We're just now at the point to where coaching is a legitimate form of business in the gaming community. So it's really interesting to see the Justin Wongs, the Daigos, the Infiltrations, who, regardless of all the training, they figured out, because of their level of passion, of their level of love for this thing, and they got to a master level, an expert level at this action. So it's really interesting to see that, and now that the level of entry is slowly lowering, even though the legitimacy of the sport is increasing, it's kind of interesting to see that it's the opposite of a lot of other sports. Like if you want to be a basketball player, there's so many you have to jump through to really get to the NBA. But when it comes to fighting games, you just need the desire and the skill. You know, a skilled person can be great at basketball, can be, you know, Iverson or Michael Jordan level, but if they don't jump through all the hoops, they can't just hop right into the NBA, at least to my understanding. All you have to do is register online and you can go to a major. I love that.
I think the basketball is actually a really interesting point. And that's why I think it differs from fighting games, because you remember with basketball, I forget which station it was on, but do you remember the And One series? It was a touring show of these super skilled dudes. Like they could dribble a basketball like that will blow in ways that will blow your mind. And they can dunk a ball probably better than some people who are in the NBA. But those guys never made it to the NBA. There wasn't like a list of people, like you didn't see Hot Sauce and they're doing like crazy dunks and then get signed by the Lakers. Like it didn't happen. There's reasons why that didn't happen. There's like teamwork involved in the NBA. There's a whole other slew of things that, as you said, like there's steps you need to take to be at that level of professionalism. Fighting games doesn't necessarily have, like, there's almost no barrier of entry except for whatever effort you're going to put in. And also there's skill involved. There's like a certain natural talent that like you either kind of have it or you don't. Like reactions, like your reaction time does matter. Like your ability to see something and physically react to it matters. Not as much, like we've talked about it, like that's why you see older guys still do well in fighting games against younger players, because of their knowledge base and their expectations of what you're going to do. So it's like an aided reaction instead of just like, here's a stimulus, react to it kind of thing. Like that is a thing in fighting games, but that blow is kind of softened. So it's not as stringent, let's say, to play at a higher level. But you're right. There's no real barrier of entry, and these guys who have coaches and can get coached, like, I think that's something that you hear about it, but you don't really see it. So you don't know about it, of what goes behind the scenes of, let's say you hear that, this is, for example, like Justin Wong being dropped by EG and got picked up by, but that's actually a really interesting question of like, do they, like, what's his 401k look like? Like what's Daigo's 401k look like? What's his retirement plan? Which, if you're gonna look at the long run of things, I mean, he's got his book out, so he's making money that way. He runs streams and is on other people's streams. Like there's a whole, like the dude has a manager who follows him around, and like that dude doesn't hold his phone. That dude doesn't hold his phone when it tweets. Like that's not him making those tweets. If you're thinking that he's the one holding the phone and typing in English, like those words, it's not him. That's somebody else. Like that is someone else's problem, because he has to focus on fighting games and get better at them. Like that's, and to beat players so that his team and his whatever brand he's carrying can move forward.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and the reason I talk about this is it's really relevant, at least in my opinion, because esports in general is a growing industry. It's an entertainment. People watch it and people love it. And I don't think that's going to die down anytime soon. So as it gets more and more entertaining, that's going to bring in more and more revenue in different areas. And that means that people performing these tasks, the people covering it, the people hosting it, they're all going to be able to make make a living, or at least make some sort of income doing this.
Mm.
And for me, what's really fascinating is to take these people, and like how you said you want to be the John Madden of fighting games. For me, it's like taking these skills that these people have and learning to benefit them in the long term, so that they can retire, so that they can learn how to really market themselves and all these other things. Because it's so fascinating. These people have so many skills, and not in a bad way. A lot of them do make money, but a lot of them are still working 9 to 5 to supplement their their travels. They work their jobs and then they pay for their travel expenses. In my eyes, I see more of these people being able to do this as a living. Like you do have Daigo and other people, Justin Wong, Infiltration, do this as a living, but there's so many other people who are Evo winners who are still working jobs. And that, in no way am I saying that's a bad thing, but what bothers me is people work jobs they don't like. That's what irritates me, is that a lot of these people, whether they're the pros or even people, or like, everyone has skills that are marketable, and a lot of people are working these jobs that they don't want to do, or they're living a life they don't want to, and the only escape they have is the fighting game, and that bothers me on a very deep level. And if I can do anything to help that, whether it be sharing conversations and talking to people and help promote them, or even just my coaching services, whatever it is, this is not going anywhere. Gaming isn't going anywhere. It's entertaining. I love it. Tons of people love it. Tons of people have confidence in it. You're seeing it more and more every day. So there's no reason that we can't make a living doing what we love.
Mm-hmm. I think that there's the path to starting to make an actual living is, you've seen people pave the way for that, but that doesn't mean that there aren't also opportunities for you to maybe not make a living, but at least make some money. Right. Because that's the other question is, do you want that to be your living? Like, you have to ask yourself that question. Like, you have to earnestly ask, like, would it be okay if this is just what I did for a living? Like, can I see myself doing this? And not even can I see myself doing this in X amount of years? It's like, maybe you have a plan of a 3-year look ahead of, I could probably take some time off of whatever I was doing for actual money to see if this will work out. And there's ways that you can financially plan for that. But the other thing that I actually think is kind of interesting that I haven't actually thought about, but have you ever seen someone take out a loan to follow a career in professional gaming? Is that going to be an option? Are banks going to look at that and say that might be viable for this person? That's kind of an off the cuff kind of thing of I don't know if anyone's ever asked that question, or at least thought about that being a thing. You'd probably get laughed out of a bank, but because there's the whole level of understanding of what it is you do. And you probably have to have a really good financial plan of, here's how you make money, of here's my stream, here's my subscribe button. It's $5 or whatever. And I plan on getting this many of followers in X amount of time. Here's how much work I would have to put in. Here's how much time I would have to spend streaming to supplement, just to have that cash supplement on the side. Even for if I could be candid about book sales, where it's I did make the book, but it was never for financial reasons. But from a financial standpoint, the way that Amazon works, I didn't see any of that money for 2 months. It's held up in Amazon accounts for 2 months. So I would have, even if I would have been okay, I'm quitting my job, we're pushing books. That's literature in 2017. Let's go. If that was the plan, I wouldn't have had any money for 2 months, or no income for 2 months. There's a whole, what else would I have done? There's more to the plan than that. And also you had to work out taxes, because you're all working. Most of the money that people are getting from fighting games and gaming in general is all pre-tax. So you kind of have to set aside money for when tax season comes to say, well, here's kind of what I owe. And if you didn't plan for that, then you can be like really screwed up. Like that is like financial planning is like kind of important when it comes to like going out on your own and trying to make a living, especially in gaming where it's kind of like a solo career, you know?
It's not easy. And to clarify a little bit before we head out, I do want to specify, like, just to the people listening, that not just money doesn't just come from winning tournaments. There's so many other ways that you can make some sort of money, whether it be like passive income, affiliate marketing, or sponsorships or anything. But it does take effort. It does take failure, just like fighting games. There's ways to do things, but it's going to take a little bit of work. And even if you love competitive fighting games, like you want to be part of the scene for the rest of your life, but that's not how you want to make your income. The point I was trying to make is that a lot of people are still they're going to their escape of the FGC or whatever it is that they love, but then they're going back to the real world where they have jobs. And sometimes I know competitive game players who want to be musicians or singers or these other things, but they don't completely throw themselves into it. I'm not saying quit your job and go do that, but you know, for a long time I had a 9-to-5 and I did that, but then I'd come straight home, I'd work out, I'd work on my business, I'd work on my training, getting certifications. It takes this level of desire, just like it takes, some people are great at fighting games. Transfer that desire to whatever it is else that you want to do financially as well. And that I won't go too long on that, but that's kind of what I was thinking, is that a lot of people want to make a living doing something they love, but don't know how to quite do it. But from my point of view, I say go for it, because you're going to love it, even if it isn't like financially stable right away. Find a way to make it happen. Just like you said, do your research, learn everything about it, learn what you can and can't do. So that said, I'll let you know where, or Joe is going to say where he can find, or where, I can't even talk. Can't even use my words. I'm hungry. But Joe, if you can let them know where they can find you.
Okay, so you can find me on Twitter at Super Joe Munday, or on Reddit, which is just Joe_Munday. One of the mods over there. Hit me up anytime. I will hop on whatever questions you got. You can hop in like the Street Fighter Discord as well. There's links all over when you go to our Street Fighter. So hop on our Street Fighter. I'm there in some capacity. Come see me.
Come see him. And actually, yeah, I have been going to the beginners Discord a lot. There's bronze to gold people in there, a few streamers, and so it's actually a really cool community, very diverse skill levels. So hop in there. You'll see me sometimes late at night playing with a few other people. I think Boom 3K is a guy that streams every now and then, really cool guy. So yeah, check him out. I'll put a link down below to the Discord as well, because it's actually really fun. If you don't have a community,
really good Discord. That's like shout outs to Mr. Vinegar, who runs that. Mr. Vinegar, he's like the lead on the beginner and intermediate Discord. That dude has put in some work. There's like tournaments, like it almost doesn't make sense for me to make a schedule for them, because it's like every day, like there's something going on for them literally every day. So hop in there. The schedule's in the Discord. Like check them out, especially if you're a beginner. But even if you're like a more advanced player who wants to help out younger people who are newer to the FGC, let's say, that is a really good place to do it, like you were saying.
All right. And as always, conversations are great as always. I'm hoping we can do it again, because every time we talk, I get more ideas that we should talk about. So I hope to talk about
taxes next time.
Oh, maybe. God, it can go all over the place. So there's a lot. But yeah, thanks for joining. I appreciate it.
No problem. So it was my pleasure.